Check one. They're not here yet. All right. You all are going to see this weird picture of just me standing here. This is not for you. This is for the people online. All right? It's always different. But the reason why it's this... Oh, and you don't want to do this weird... I got to change this. Hold on. Otherwise, it's going to be me for infinity. So let me just get out of... Come on, camera. My Lanta. Get my good side. If you're watching, just bear with me. Technical difficulties, of course. Oh, I guarantee you the batteries are dead in this thing. I can manually move this, can't I?
The answer is yes.
There. Is it in focus now? Sure. I just didn't want that, infinity cascading. It's not going to be in focus. Is it in focus? Whatever. That's what you get. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have touched it. I have 20-some. There are extras, yeah. All right, everyone good? Wonderful? It's good to see you all. I would say I'm glad you're here, but, I am glad you're here. Well, I'm glad to be here.
I was really wondering if you were so sick.
No, I can't. I was just raised this way. Everyone plays hurt. You show up, and it doesn't matter. Mandy and I talk about this all the time. It's like, when do you not show up to church? And it's like, it has to be coming out both ends. I have to be near death, to not show up. Yeah, and she's the same way. It's like that's just how we're made. You can't not show up. I called her. I think it was on right before I had to preach. I think I was still in Arkansas, and I was like, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my voice, because that's what normally happens to me. Like, I get sick, and for some reason it just attacks my throat. And then there was one year, y'all will remember, I could not talk. And I was away at a friend's weekend at the If you're online watching, I'm just telling stories for a moment. Sorry, I was away at a friend's gathering, and I had my wife call Dr. Fulbright, the DS. I was like, I can't. And she was like, I'll do it. So my wife called her, and she's like, who is this? It was like, it's Jen. It's Josh's wife. She said, oh, Jennifer. Yeah. I was like, I can't go. Anyways, the problem was that was also Communion Sunday. And so there was actually some interesting ideas, like who can do communion if the elder can't do the liturgy. Yeah, and so, Kevin is a local licensed pastor, but he's only licensed for his parish, right? He's not licensed. Like, I can go to any parish and do communion because I'm an elder. So Pastor Mandy's a local licensed pastor. She can't go to another parish and she's not permitted to unless she's given permission. Anyways, it was the whole thing. It all worked out. Of this parish, yes. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, I think it's very interesting. Yeah. The church is the credentialing body. I think that's the term that we use, right? So there is this idea of who is called. We would say, well, God calls. Who credentials? That's the question. It was up to the district superintendent. Yeah. And she was like, yeah, go for it, dude. So, and he came in, he did it. It was not a problem. So I called Mandy, and I was like, I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to talk. And I said, I'll still be there if I can't talk. But, yeah. So that's why she did the full liturgy on Sunday, because I was like, yeah, I'm going to preach for 10 minutes, and I'm done. Okay, enough of that. Y'all, thanks for being here. I am very excited for these next few weeks. As we talked about this past winter, right, we took a little bit of a break for Christmas and New Year's, and it'll be good to be back in the rhythm of things. The interruption for us will be Ash Wednesday. And so we will run this series up to Ash Wednesday, and then we'll take a break on Ash Wednesday, Excuse me. And then from there, we will pick back up, but we'll pick up with a different subject matter.
Okay, so Ash Wednesday sometime in mid-March.
It is February 18th. You're right. So Easter is I think it's early this year. It's the first Sunday in April. Yeah. So that's the outline for where we're headed. All right. So can I offer a word of prayer for us this evening as we gather in this space and prepare our hearts? Oh, holy God. We gather in again to open up your word and to encounter you. Pray as we do some groundwork tonight and till the soil and prepare the frame and double check everything, that you would be in the midst of our conversation. Help us to engage the book of Judges as you intended it, and that we would be formed by it, that we would be both somehow skeptical and reverent at the same time, so that we might be transformed. We pray this all in your Son's name. Amen.
I've got a question.
Already? You haven't even started.
Easter's the first week in April. How can Ash Wednesday be only the 18th of March? You sure it's not?
No.
18th of February.
18th of February.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're fine. Good question.
I didn't hear you say February.
That's okay. And I might have said March. I don't know. The months that I do get confused are June and July, which is terrible. Why do I get this confused? I don't know. And you know why it's terrible? My wife's birthday is in July. And the reason why it takes me a while to say is I have to say May, June, July in my head. I can't get it right. Yeah, right? It's just, it's a dark time. No, it's okay. All right. So, excuse me, that'll be all night tonight. So, where to begin? I wanted to do something a little different. Where we typically begin, right, is we begin in chapter 1. We begin at the beginning, right? When we read Ruth, we began in chapter 1. And so we all opened to chapter 1 and we read and then we talked about it. And we encountered themes on their own terms. Like we encountered them as they came up in the text. I admittedly wanted to shape Judges a little differently. And there's some rationale behind this. One is, let's find the book of Judges to begin with, right? So, well, come on now. Okay, so Old or New Testament, we'll find Judges in the Old Testament. And let's go from the beginning, right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Pause. First 5 books are called what? The Torah, sometimes called the Law. If you're fancy, they can be called the we're close, the Pentateuch. Yeah, which means 5 books, okay? So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And then it goes into the historical stuff, right? And I'll put historical in quotes, right? Because the question is like, well, what do you mean by that? And I'm going to say, yeah, I don't know. Okay, but then it's like Joshua, clearly the best book of the Bible. And then after Joshua would be Judges. So Judges is the 7th book in our Protestant canon. It is going to be in a different location than other Bibles and other scriptures. It's found in a different location in the Hebrew texts. Which raises maybe a first question for us. Why? Why? And let's focus on the why for the Protestant canonical text. Why is it here as opposed to somewhere else? And it's here to serve as a bridge, right? So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth. 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings, 1st, 2nd Chronicles. Remember, you have to have kings to have the Chronicles of the Kings, and that's how you can remember the rulings. And then you have to have Samuel. Samuel is the guy, right? He's the guy who calls Saul, and he anoints Saul and says, "You are the king." He anoints David, and he says, "You are the king." So Samuel is a prophet. Except for Samuel might be a judge. Okay? There we go. And that's why we find Judges where we find it. it makes sense for us to encounter it that way. Now, theologically, again, and when we say theologically, we're talking about God talk, right? It might make sense somewhere else based on the content of the book. But as we read the Bible, we're going and we're reading, it makes sense to find it where it is.
Yeah, because they said that before the kings, everybody just did whatever they wanted to do.
Oh, you are reading some notes, but I know you can't, but that we are on the same, I know, we are on the same page, I'll tell you that.
It's written all over your chest.
Yeah, right? All right, so we got Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth. So there are 21 chapters of Judges. We ain't doing 21 weeks, right? Right. And that's why even when we did Genesis, 50 chapters in Genesis, we did not do 50 weeks. When there were 40 weeks of Exodus, we did not do 40 weeks. So I wanted to frame it this way. And on that top of the page, you'll see the different sessions and how it's laid out. Tonight I want to talk about a summary, introduction, the author, the themes, and the characters. Just to give us a framework. So do this real quick. No cheating. Or just look. It's okay. You can either turn this over or just trust yourself. Can you name the judges? Give me some. What you got?
Well, there's Gideon,
Gideon.
and there's
I'm not looking.
Samson,
Samson.
and there's the girls, Deborah and Jael.
Deborah. Well, Jael is in the book of Judges, but not a judge. And then the question is Deborah... Uh-huh. Who else? Right. Good. I'm glad that we all have the same experience, right? I don't know if I've shared this experience with you once. When I was in undergrad, I had a professor. He's gone on to glory. His name was Dr. Wilbur Williams. And he had a storied kings test where you would come in for Old Testament and he gave you a blank sheet of paper and he said, write the name of the kings in order. That was the test. And I did not do very well, right? It is a very difficult test. In the same way, if I said, name the judges and how many are there, we get a few of them.
9, I think it was.
Well, so I have this question: what qualifies or characterizes someone as a judge? He's good. So, how many judges are there? There's historically, or maybe traditionally, 12. Okay.
In Judges,
In Judges. Now, are there more? Perhaps. And there might be more than they're named, or there might even be more within the book of Judges. And then the question becomes, well, what constitutes a judge? And what is a judge? Making sense so far? It's the same question. If I ask you, how many disciples did Jesus have? What's the answer? We usually, yeah, right now, yeah, y'all are there, right? We say 12. But did he have more? And you go, well, yeah, but there's 12, right? So how many judges are there? 12. Were there more? Well, maybe, but the answer is 12. And that's, again, that's the number. When that number, bing, 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 right, we go, 12, right? 12 tribes of Israel, 12 disciples. This 12 is it's a number. Like 3 or 7, it's a number. Is it historically true? Yes. Is it metaphor? Yes. Is it symbolism? Yes. Is it important? Yes. So, right? You tracking with me? Okay. So what I wanted to do was I divided it into 4 main sections or sessions. Session 1 is going to be titled When Deliverance is Dramatic. And we're going to look at these big stories that are in the children's Bibles. You know what I mean? Like Samson is in every children's Bible. Yeah. But then you read some of the others and you go, there's a reason that Judge is not in a children's Bible. And there's a reason why some sections of Samson's story are not in a children's Bible, and I'm not talking about just the sexual stuff, Gideon, for example, I think uses an ox goad and kills a bunch of people with a stick, You know, Samson kills a bunch of Philistines with the jaw of an ass. And this is really the interesting thing about the translation. We'll get into all this. Is that translation is not exactly true. I mean, you could read it as he killed a bunch of Philistines with the jawbone of an ass, or he killed the Philistines by holding the jaw of an ass and literally killing people with a donkey, which I think is a hilarious translation. You know, the idea of Samson just mowing down people holding the donkey. You know, he's like the Rambo of Judges. It's just great. Okay, the second session will be when leadership is costly. The idea that there are things that happen in Judges and there's consequences. There's consequences. This book, my opinion, like the rest of the Bible, you know, growing up as I did, I was told you got to read the Bible because, you know, it's your ticket to salvation, and that way you don't go to the Bernie place. Like, you read it and be saved. And the more and more I read it on its own terms, I go, man, there is so much more here than that. It is a human story. It is about human actions. It is about God's actions and God's faithfulness and what happens when humans take matters into their own hands. And you can see the human element in it. I would encourage you, just read Judges from a leadership perspective. And you're going to go, holy crap. You know what I mean? Like, it is fascinating to say, did they do the right thing? Were they good leaders? And right, like, were they a 7 out of 10? Right? Were they a 10 out of 10? Or can you be an 8 out of 10 leader and still be good? Or are there unforeseen consequences, even to actions that you think are faithful?
Well, it's just like being a parent.
Right.
You're never perfect, but you strive
Yes.
to be.
Yeah. I had a very good mentor when I was in Cincinnati. His name's Lee Strawn. He's still alive. He's retired now. Lives out in an RV, as God intended. And he's a nomad. And he said, Josh, just because you do the right thing doesn't mean the right thing's going to happen. And man, read the book of Judges. You know, it's true. Okay, so when leadership is costly. The third is when the cycle begins. There is this cyclical rhythm to the book of Judges where we will see this sort of like sin that is happening and then this oppression that overcomes them and this sort of cry out for deliverance. You know, give us a judge, O God, to take care of the problem. Is it a self-imposed problem? Sometimes, right? Is it an exterior problem? Sometimes. But the judge is called upon or drawn up, and the judge comes and delivers, and the people are free. And then a sin happens, and the cycle begins again and again and again. So we will look at Judges 1 through 3 as we look at that cycle. And then the fourth session, I think, is the most interesting, but y'all might think it's the most boring, is when faithfulness is quiet. I'm convinced there are wartime generals and peacetime generals. You know, like Churchill was the right man for that season. There was a reason he was not really popular after. Probably because he didn't really didn't know what to do. You know, there's no great evil, you know, to stand against. It's just calm. I'm not the guy for that. You know what I mean? And you can look at that. I think it's the same with judges. There are judges who are good at ruling when not as much is on the line. And then there's judges that you need when there's more on the line. Okay, I'm going to get pastoral for a moment. You're all ready? I think there are pastors that we need when there's a lot on the line, right? There are certain pastors you need in the season and life of a church to come and lead. And there will be a time when my skill set is no longer needed here, right? I think that's just how we are wired. And there will be another pastor who comes who is the right pastor. I'm not making an announcement. I'm just saying. You know, there'll be another pastor that comes and it is good and is gifted for the season that this church will be in. I think, but for such a time as this, to borrow from Esther, my skill set is needed. And then there'll be a time when I get this church to where it needs to be, however God views it, and I'll say, I can go retire on the beach. I'm good. Send someone else, Bishop. It's going to be fine. It's same with judges. We'll see that there are different types of judges. We'll get there. February 11th will be kind of some conclusions and summary. Also, I packed in a flex day, which smart. I'm learning. He can be taught. In case we go long. Excuse me. On one of these, or in case we wrap up or whatever. No, I'll burn through cough drops like candy. Okay, maybe I will take one. Thank you. Oh, perfect. My dentist appreciates you. Okay, so that's that. Any questions so far on how it's outlined? You can see the pericopes, or the sections of Scripture that we will encounter per session. So you can read ahead if you prefer. Yeah, Pericope. Yeah, a pericope is like a section of a larger body. So, I'm practicing for Jeopardy. Okay. Yeah.
I didn't know that it went over 400 years.
Hmm.
The judges go over 400-year period.
I don't have any of that yet. We will get to some of that in particular.
Because I think that's interesting.
It is interesting to see how long that period goes for when you count generations okay, so since you raised it, Missy, let's, some people will really double down on that from a historical perspective. And we'll get to here in authorship and dating. Some people say this is clearly how long it went. And it's probably no secret to you all that I don't put a lot of stock in that personally. And it's not because I don't think it's correct. Do you hear me? Like, I'm not saying that's not correct. I just think that's not the intent of the story. The story is not to say you must understand it in its historical context of 400 years. I think you should understand it in its historical context as God's faithfulness.
Well, that too, but I think also it tells the story of the Israelites' sins over a period
Oh,
of
sure.
400 years.
Oh, sure.
How they, they get straightened out and then they go for 20 years and then they have to be
Reformed. Yeah.
And then the new judgment lasts 32 years.
Yeah. And now you can see, I think you're right, but you can see why I extrapolate from that.
That's fine.
And I think that's, y'all have heard me say it, I'm going to say it again. Like, the story of Judges is not so powerful just because it happened. It's powerful because it continues to happen. It's my story as well. Yes. It's a cycle in our nation. It's a cycle not only politically, it's a cycle morally for myself. Right, okay, so the cycle is sin. So, okay, Josh screws up. And then it's oppression. Well, what does oppression mean when Josh screws up? Well, it's like, okay, Josh, you took the money, so now you gotta face the music, right? Okay, well, that's oppression. And then the cry is the repentance. Say, oh God, literally, I messed up. And then it's deliverance. Like, that's God's grace. And it's this cycle again and again and again in our lives. So I think that the themes we encounter in Judges, you can look at it and say, this happened at this time and this person and all that, and historically true, and check. But I think there's another story within that story. Or maybe we should say there's another story parallel to that story. Doing okay? Questions so far? All right. Anyone's faith just crumbled to bits? Are we doing okay? Good? All right, yeah, it's good. Okay, so I want to read my summary here, if that's okay with you all. There's a couple things we want to, look up. Then we'll talk about some authorship and dating pieces, themes and characters. I looked at my watch and I said we might get out early, and I always say that. I always say it, I'm sure we will.
That's true.
Yeah. So here we go. Yeah. So the book of Judges tells the story of Israel living in the land of Canaan after the conquest led by Joshua. Okay, this is my summary. I'm just, I'm taking stuff from commentaries. I'm taking stuff online. You'll see my own, flourish in some of this. But walk me through that first sentence. The story of Israel. Who or what is Israel? People, the Jews. Let's be specific from a biblical perspective. If I ask you the question, who's Israel? The chosen, the people of God.
The original Israel was the only God that had 12 kids.
Okay. So Israel is actually a person, a single person, and a country. And really, we should be very careful when we talk about that, because when we say country, we think like, oh, like Canada and the United States and Mexico. And I'm going to say, bro, the UN is a relatively new invention, you know. But there were countries like France and Gaul, and there were empires like Rome. But did Rome consider itself a country? Okay, so like our language begins to break down a little bit, even especially when we get into really old history. If you say like the Babylonians, or you say like the Edomites, or the Canaanites, or the Israelites. So they are people, they are descendants of Israel. 12 tribes of Israel.
It's not a geographic location as much as it is a people.
Well, what do you think? More of a people, like more of a family, a lineage?
Or a group that chooses to bind with
Okay.
others.
Other thoughts?
Israel may be more like a family.
Okay. I'm very happy with this. This is good conversation, right?
When you think of Israel now, you think of the country of Israel.
We do. We think of like, you know, the section of land that we decided after that war in 1957 or whatever. Like, that's Israel. But it's,
The wall is not around just Israel, but, I mean, the wall is around an area, it's not around all of Israel.
right. And if you're a Jew living in New York, are you a part of Israel?
Some are.
Okay, there we go. You know, yeah, like that's the,
Friends that have
that's,
dual citizenship.
yes, like that's the family of Israel. Like they're the people of Israel. Now, I'm just going to stick with the Old Testament reading of that, because if we get into the New Testament reading of Israel, we're going to have to talk about Paul, and we're going to have to talk about circumcision, and we're going to have to talk about the broadening, you know, the broadening of the understanding of church. So we'll just stick with the Old Testament for now. Okay, the story of Israel living in the land of Canaan. Where's Canaan?
North of Israel.
In the Middle East. It's over there. It's over there. Okay, is Canaan Egypt? No. Right? Canaan is sometimes called the land between.
Canaan is,
Canaan. Between what? A fantastic question. And that's why I said, is it Egypt? The answer is no. Egypt is Egypt, and Egypt has always been Egypt, right? It's old. So it's not Egypt. And it's the Levant.
Canaan were the sons of Shem.
Okay, so Canaan is like here. It's the land between. So it's Africa, right? And then there's the Suez Canal today, and then there's like this little tidbit, the wilderness where Moses wanders. And then it's like Gaza, Jordan, like Israel, modern day. Saudi Arabia's over here. Like, and then there's like Asia, right? And then up this way, above Egypt, I'm upside down for you all, right? So above Egypt, like the Mediterranean. And then there's like Greece. And Greece is Greece. Like the Homer, the Iliad, and like Jason and the Argonauts. You know, like it's been there for a long time. Like Athens is Athens. It's not Canaan. Okay? And now to get historical for a moment, okay, you'll remember. I'm going to really test myself here. I don't have any notes. I'm just going, right? Okay, so there is a strait that runs through this into, like, I think it's like one of the seas up there, and you can't get across it. And like Alexander the Great goes and he conquers all the way over here, and then he goes out all the way towards like India. And he gets to India and he stops and he turns around. So the land between this Canaan area, the land of Canaan, touches 3 continents. It touches Europe, it touches Asia, and it touches Africa. And maybe that's also why it's so stinking important. You talk about trade, talk about like military, like moving people around. Okay. So when we say Canaan, that's the area. And it's an area, not a defined region. Okay? After the conquest led by Joshua. So Moses raises up Aaron, Aaron raises up Joshua, and Joshua raises up nobody. And that's why you have the judges. Okay, second sentence. Israel repeatedly turns away from God. Shocker. And suffers consequences. Shocker. When the people cry out, God raises up judges. And the word judges is an interesting one. And I want to share a little bit about the etymology of judges, if I can. I got to get my notes going here. So, judges is really only found in the beginning of the book. I didn't write it down. Chapter 2, verse 16. Is that right? Two. Come on. Yes, I did it. Okay. Yep. So if you look for the word judges before then, you ain't going to find it, to my knowledge. Which, I thought it would be like in the first chapter. After the death, well, let's look. So Judges 1:1. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites inquired of the Lord, who shall go up for us against the Canaanites to fight against them? The Lord said, Judah shall go up. I hereby give this land unto Judah. Like,
Wait a minute.
oh, come on. You can argue with me.
Moses' father-in-law set up a series of judges because Moses had too much.
You're right. I meant in the book of Judges itself.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Well, you said they were just those judges.
Yeah.
They were the first judges.
Because I want to ask the.
Judges are mentioned.
Yeah, no, in the book of Judges.
Okay.
Because if I asked you, here's the question: is what does a judge do?
Judges.
All right, judges.
Yeah, but in this case, it's more of a leadership.
Okay, this is the point: is it's not one singular thing.
It's not like executing law or
Right.
administering law. It's more of a leadership.
Right, and when we think of a judge today, we think of the guy to wear the black robe, and then the bailiff says, all stand, and the judge walks in, and you may be seated, and the judge pronounces from the bench the verdict, right? Like that's what we think of when we think of judge, and that's not what the biblical judge is. But did they judge like that? Some are like a legal judge. Some are more like deliverers. Some are military leaders. Some are more priestly or priestess. And so there's not one single job description for judge. Does that make sense so far? It's very similar, I think, if I said, what does a pastor do? And like, does Pastor Mandy and Pastor Josh do the same thing? You would say, well, yeah, but, they do different things, and they do it differently. And I go, exactly, right? Because it's dependent on giftedness and personality and calling and passion and all the things.
Judges are more just leaders.
Yes, they are leaders. Okay, yeah.
It would be boring if you both sing.
Say what?
It would be boring if you were singing.
Right, yeah. If it was just like judge number 1, same thing as judge number 2. But I think we should be careful then if we understand the diversity in that term, and we need to understand the diversity in the judges. When we encounter the stories, we need to encounter them as they are and not say, oh, well, this person's not like Samson or not like Deborah or not like Gideon. They're different. Okay? The word means chieftain or ruler. They're diverse leaders, and they don't all have the same job within the book itself. Okay, so God raises up judges. These judges are leaders. They are empowered by God's Spirit to deliver Israel from oppression, which I said was sometimes self-inflicted. Shocker. Each cycle of sin, oppression, a cry out, deliverance, and then rest. And I missed that last part in my first example of this. And the reason why there's rest there is because there's normally some time that passes until it begins again. Reveals both God's faithfulness and Israel's moral and spiritual decline. By the end of the book, the chaos of life without faithful leadership becomes clear, showing the need for a king who will lead the people under God's authority. So, let's look at a few different things just to orient us to where we are. Let's begin at the end. Judges 21:25, which Missy already took the wind out of our sails and said it, but it's very important. Would someone like to read it aloud for us, nice and loud? Just that last verse of the book of Judges.
In those days Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit.
What a brutal ending.
And here it is.
You're right? You know, you would expect something more hopeful, something more, I don't know, and they lived happily ever after. The end. But the book of Judges ends, everyone did what was right in their own eyes because there was no king. Period. Fade to black.
It would be nice if it was, and there was law and order.
Right, yes, and they lived happily ever after and there was law and order. But there's not. Okay, that's how the book ends. I'm telling you now. Spoiler alert. So it ends on this kind of a cliffhanger, kind of a, so what's next, right? And I'm glad you asked. Let's go to Ruth 1:1, which we've already studied the book of Ruth in here. And those of you who weren't around then, I'm sorry, it's online. You can check it out if you want. But let's hear again from our old friend Ruth. Would someone like to read really loud Ruth 1:1?
In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab.
Love it, right? So we get this sort of, dark ending to the book of Judges. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes, and there was no king. During that time, there was a famine, right? God, it gets worse. Not only was there, kind of sin and moral and, decline and everyone was doing what was right in their own eyes, then there's a famine. And in the midst of that, as we know in the book of Ruth, it's about God's faithfulness and about these people trusting in God and finding a deliverer, a kinsman redeemer. And out of that story comes eventually the lineage of the tribe of David. Okay. So that's sort of our bookmarks. And now let's go to Judges 1:1, which I think I already read, but let's read it again to see where the book of Judges begins. Would someone like to read Judges 1:1 nice and loud for us?
After the death of Joshua, the Israelites asked the Lord, who will be the first to go up and fight for us against the Canaanites?
Okay, why do they need to fight the Canaanites?
Because the Canaanites are always trying to take them over, take over their land.
Okay, well, that's interesting. You said, are the Canaanites trying to take over the land?
Wasn't that part of the promise they thought? So they had to fight the Canaanites to get it.
Okay, they're told to go into the land and to kill the Canaanites. So why does so read it again, real loud. Go ahead.
After the death of Joshua, the Israelites asked the Lord, who will be the first to go up and fight for us against the Canaanites?
So what do we know based off that verse? I think I'll make some claims if I can.
That they hadn't conquered the whole
Come on now. They did not finish what God told them to do. And we know that God, this is, nod your head. There is sanctioned killing in the Bible, right? So God says, go into that city and kill everyone. And they don't. And they intermarry. And they do all sorts of,
And he says, don't do that.
he says, don't do it, guys. Come on. And they're like, it's not that bad. And then their hearts are turned away from God. And then they don't, they don't take over the land. And so they're stuck with this perennial problem of like having one foot in God's promise and one foot over here, and like, do we trust or do we not? Or so who's going to fight for us? And so God has to raise people up to deliver them from the problems, in my opinion, that they've created for themselves. You might disagree with my interpretation, and that's plenty okay. But I think if you go back and read Joshua, you're going to say, it's pretty clear, right? And then they don't do it.
Well, God said they were evil and he wanted them gone.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's pretty clear. Yeah. I mean, I wrestle, right? Let's be clear. I wrestle with my modern understanding of genocide and right and wrong and people groups. And I go, you can't do that, God. We have rights and laws now. How dare you? But it was I'm just going to say it was a different time, a different understanding. Were they good people? I don't know. I'm not God. What I understand is the text from the perspective of Israel, and they understand them to be not good people. That doesn't, in my opinion, that does not morally make it correct to go in and exterminate people, right? But that is the divine command, and they don't do it. That's my reading of it. They're just disobedient.
And we still have problems.
We still have problems, right? But it's okay. We've got to read it on its own terms. And so maybe the reasons why they need the judges is because they didn't follow through in the first place. And of course, the judges period is not a great period. It's not like, hey, this is wonderful. Yeah, right? We're going to see ups and downs, and it's really dark and challenging. Okay, we're doing fine. Okay, so that's the summary, I think, of the book of Judges. Historically, the book has been attributed to Samuel, which I think is interesting. I would have missed that clue on Jeopardy. I would have said, Moses? ? But it's Samuel, which makes sense because, Samuel's later, and he writes Samuel. But did he really write it? You all know my answer to this. We don't know, and he's dead, and so we can't ask him. But who knows? It was probably written in the late 7th or 8th century if Samuel didn't write it. But who was it written by? It doesn't really matter. So I wanted to ask this question, and it's kind of the last question on that section here. It says, how do we date a text's compilation or publication? Reminder that there's no Library of Congress or an ISBN number, right? So I'm just going to take the Bible for a moment and set it to the side. If we were at the pub having a pint, as they say, and we're sitting here and you start, lambasting me for believing in such an antique book like the Bible, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to put you to the nails, as they say, and I'm going to do it in a way that's really uncomfortable. But I'm going to do it in a way that is going to be subtle. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you believe that Shakespeare wrote all of his plays? Oh, come on. Come on. Why not? It was a woman who did it. Okay? Okay? Okay, did Shakespeare write some of it? Oh, now you see, once we take the Bible out of the equation, we start talking about things that aren't religious, everyone's like, well, how can we know? How can we not know? Or people are very sure or not sure. I know, and Shakespeare wasn't, and I understand. I'm not trying to compare the two. I'm trying to compare how we critique something so heavily by modern standards and how we internally hold a double standard when it's not a holy text. We hold it to a higher standard, and I'm going to say, well, that's a bunch of baloney, and let me prove it to you. Like, did Thomas Jefferson pen the Declaration of Independence by himself? Why do we not know? This was only a couple hundred years ago.
Well, it's all in his head right now.
I mean, did someone help him? Did someone sit in the tent with him and say, start with we the people, bro? I mean, it's a legitimate question. You know what I mean? Am I making sense? So, was Judges a compilation of material, and someone eventually said, hey, these stories go together. Put them together. Come on, Susan, write it down.
And maybe there were a number of people who wrote different stories.
Yes.
Were compiled.
Yes. Now, are you ready for my turn here? Is Shakespeare any less beautiful because we don't necessarily have 100% proof of the author? No, it's gorgeous, right? Is the Declaration of Independence any less powerful because it may have multiple writers or didn't or different authors? No, it's still an important document because of what it is. The book of Judges is the same thing. You know, it doesn't matter if Samuel wrote it or not. It doesn't matter if Moses wrote the Pentateuch or not. You know, I'm going to stop preaching now. So, but that's, you know, if we were having a pint, that's what I would say. Like, we can't get caught up on these sort of like authorial matters and like, well, the compilation or it's the game of telephone. It's been translated and it's been corrupted. I'm going to roll my eyes. You know what I mean? I don't have a whole lot of patience for those sort of conversations. Because when it's any other document, we just say, oh, it must be different. You know, whatever. So that's how I feel about that. Yes, yeah. So the reason why we date it that way is normally because of internal evidence. You know, if we were to mention the Gulf of America, you know that what I'm talking about is probably post 2025, 2020. Like, if someone 100 years from now is reading something and they come across, oh, the Gulf of America, and it's a historical piece, I'm not talking about science fiction or fantasy, right? And they say, oh, this was clearly written in 1860, right? They're wrong because the internal evidence would suggest otherwise. The same, you know, common sense scholarship is applied to the Bible. So when we see people groups mentioned, right? You can't exterminate Canaanites if there ain't no Canaanites, right? So they're there. And so therefore, because they're there, this has to take place after or during when the Canaanites are there. So that's how we normally date things in the Bible, which we've encountered a few different times.
Kind of running it parallel with his story,
Yes.
right? So we know this happened then from a history, and then this story.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is why when I'm sitting at the pub with friends that are like really skeptical or they don't believe in the Bible, I'm just like, dude, you're going to have to try harder. Like, because like the evidence is pretty overwhelming that this is true. Now, whether or not you believe in God or whether or not you believe in the Holy Spirit or Jesus raised from the dead, those are questions of faith. But if you want to sit here and debate historical accuracy with me, you're going to have a really bad time. You know, people have tried to debunk it, and they've really fallen short. Okay, so that's that. So let's talk about some of the themes. Ooh, we're doing good. These themes are, as I see them, you might read this book and say, Josh, I see different themes. And I'm going to say, you're probably right. But, you know, as your pastor reads and sees and thinks and feels, these are, okay, I wrote this, so you can disagree with me. Here's my themes for the book of Judges. What is morally permissible? What is morally permissible? How should one lead when placed in authority? And sin often leads to oppression. And God is faithful. And this is my favorite one. I hear my son yelling in the other room, right? Yeah. So sin often leads to oppression. He said, ow, at like the perfect time, right? All right. So, and God is faithful. But what is the human cost of free will? What's the human cost of free will? That's my opinion. This is the theme in Judges, these themes, that we're going to see.
Well, it's just like a child that's undisciplined.
Well, I would even argue it's just like a person, whether they're disciplined or not. Yeah, I'm with you.
Like a kid.
Yeah.
An undisciplined kid grows into an undisciplined adult.
Yeah, and you know, you and I might disagree on this, but I think even disciplined adults can be downright ornery. You know, and I think and they're downright ornery or do the wrong thing because they want to.
Free will.
Yes. And there are things that happen outside of free will, you know, cosmic things, acts of God, you know, stuff. But a lot of the reason I think this stuff happens in Judges is because someone made a decision. And then there's, you know, an action because of the decision, and the judges respond. And we'll see this cycle again and again and again and again. Again, feel free to disagree. This is just from some of my studying and thoughts. So here are the characters. Here are the 12 judges. And we'll write them down here. And y'all, again, even if you read this and you flipped it over and said, tell me the 12, you go, I don't know. I don't know. So here they are. Othniel. Nope. Othniel. Othniel. Yep. Ehud. I know that one. Shamgar. How could I forget Shamgar? Deborah, with Barak as the military leader. So who's the judge in the story? I'm with you. It is Deborah. You know, is Barak? Okay, never. We'll get there. We'll talk about like. I know. Isn't it interesting? What does it tell us about all sorts of things? Love it. And also, what a progressive understanding of God's calling on people. God calls women to leadership in the Old Testament. You know, and then for the longest time they say, only dudes can be priests. I'm just saying, right? I go, have you read the Bible? That's crazy, you know. Okay, yep. All right, Gideon, Tola. That sounds like an NFL player. Okay. Jair, Jephthah, Jair, Jair. Yep. Okay. And you know what? You brought up another point. You said what I was going to say. Thank you. Right? Yep. That's all it says. There's no vowels. We will remind ourselves about Hebrew. Yep. There's a term that I'm failing to remember. It's just consonants, except for A. A is a consonant in Hebrew. I don't know why. Yep, it's just J. It might be an aleph and R, but it's okay. And then it's Jephthah, Ibzan, Elon, Abdon, and Samson. And most of y'all know the story of Samson, and we'll end here, right? Samson's a story about the Nazarite, and he's the dude who's really strong. Everyone's favorite judge, at least all the dudes' favorite judges. You're like, dude, Samson, I like him. He's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's also a ladies' man. What's not to like about him, right? And then he goes around and he kills the Philistines. He just owns them. He's like the Rambo. And he's got the long hair, the dreadlocks. The dude's, super cool. Until Delilah comes, that honeypot, that seductress. Man, she looks good in the dress. And Samson doesn't know what to do about that. And he's like, hey, baby, right? And so Samson, she's seduced, as the dudes would be, She looks amazing, and then she figures out the secret to his strength, which is apparently he uses Head and Shoulders. And so she cuts his hair, and he loses his strength, and then like the Philistines put out his eye. It's a horrific story. It goes really bad, really fast. And Samson's standing there, and he's like, God, if you'll give me the strength one more time, I'll push down this temple, and I'll kill all the Philistines. Right? And we'll get into this whole other thing. Who are the Philistines, and where do they come from? Anyways, we'll get there. And Samson, he pushes out the pillars and he collapses the evil temple, and all the Philistines die. And it's like the end of some great Arnold movie where he's like, and it's just a great piece of literature, It is a good ending, right? So, yeah. So, we will encounter some of those stories as we get into this. We will encounter all the judges, excuse me, but we're going to encounter them in different. We're not going to encounter them in chronological order. We're going to encounter them in this thematic order. When deliverance is dramatic, when leadership is costly, when the cycle begins, and when faithfulness is quiet. Okay. That's it. I've done my bit. Questions, comments, concerns? Uh-huh. I've tried to organize it so that we can spend time equally. But, you can't spend, maybe I said it backwards, equitably? You can't because the content is not equal. Some judges have more chapters. Some judges have fewer chapters. It doesn't mean they're not important. It's just they didn't write as much. Their story's not as cool as Samson's. That's a cool story, bro. She's got a great story. We even thought about naming our daughter Jael. I'm not even kidding you. It was a short-listed name, because I don't want to ruin it if you don't know the story. But she murders someone with a tent peg. Because she's a cool woman. It's in the Bible. Don't be mad at your pastor, It's a great story. And Well, she's a devout woman of God. She does the right thing. And it costs a lot, but she does what's right when it's not really, everyone else is a big old chicken. And she's the one who goes in and takes care of business. I was like, that's a strong bleep woman. Like, I'm going to name my daughter after that. Anyway, we didn't go that route, you know. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions? Are we doing good? So we have like 3 minutes. I'm just going to read. This is a commentary from Mary Evans. And I read this, this very first chapter here. Author's preface. Nope, I lied. I got to find the introduction. Bear with me. But I read it, and I was, dare I say, captivated. I'll just read for a little bit here, and then I'll just trail off when I'm no longer captivated. But I read the first couple sentences, I was like, dang, that's good. And I wanted to read it to y'all tonight. So, Judges is not an easy book to read, although the effort it takes to do so will prove very worthwhile. It contains some difficult material from both a literary and a narrative point of view. Some of the stories can only be seen as extremely unpleasant, although there are some wonderful high spots. Problems in understanding the book arise, particularly when, as seems to have happened regularly in church contexts, the hard stories are largely ignored, and only the high spots are known and talked about. And I think we began there by saying, for some reason, not all these stories make it into a children's Bible. Yeah, for good reason. But should they be talked about in a church context, in a Bible study? Yes. We should not ignore the difficult parts. And hopefully we don't. Okay.
You know, I guess I'm just gory, but I love reading Judges.
No, I'm with you. I love it. I love it.
Love a good gory
I love it.
I just, you know, it's just heroic. These
It is.
people that step up
And it's interesting.
do God's work.
I think, something challenging about the book of Esther was it was 12 or 16 chapters, right? And it's like, it's the same 3 characters. You know what I mean? And it's not a very long book, but it's like, what are we going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about Esther. And then next week, we're going to talk about Esther. And then another character is introduced and then killed, and we're talking about Esther. It's not bad. The Judges is like, we're going to talk about this dude. And then we're talking about a different person in a different context, in a different time period. And another, 30 years later, and we'll talk about somebody else. So we'll be jumping around, and it'll be nice. All right. I'm going to open up. I'm going to close, not open. I'm going to close with a word of prayer, and then we'll go from here. So, Holy God, as we go back to our homes and go our separate ways, Lord, we pray that you'd bring us rest. May these stories over the coming weeks continue to, pester us, bother us in a good way, that we would ask questions, and in doing so, we would have the courage to encounter you. Be with folks who couldn't be here tonight. Pray that you be with our community in the midst of illnesses going around and folks who are hospitalized or recovering from surgery and folks who are homebound and unable to get out. Be with the folks watching online tonight as well. We pray this all in your son's name. Amen. All right. Thanks, friends. Good to see y'all.